listening. We do it every day, but unfortunately, often not well enough or as well as we could. While we all know this, the trend for better listening isn't moving in the right direction for ourselves, for most of us, and certainly in our society. If you would like to be a better listener, you're in the right place. If you would like your organization to be full of better listeners, you are in the right place. Today, we're going to learn about the art, yes, the art of active listening. Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, where we are helping leaders grow personally and professionally to lead more effectively and make a bigger difference for their teams, organizations, and the world. If you're listening to this podcast, you could have been with us live, and you could for future episodes do that on your favorite social channel. You can learn more about when they're going to take place so that you can join us and interact and get this information, in this case, a couple of months sooner by joining our Facebook or LinkedIn groups. Just go to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook, remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn to do that. Hope you will. And today's episode is brought to you by our new book, The Long Distance Team, Designing a Team for Everyone's Success. You can learn more at longdistanceteambook.com. Again, longdistanceteambook.com, where you can get an excerpt and learn more about the book, as well as getting links to make your purchase, which I hope you will do. And now, without any further ado, let me bring in our guest. And whoops, there she is. I clicked it twice. Let me introduce Heather Younger, and then we'll dive in. Heather Younger is the author of the book, The Art of Active Listening, How People at Work Feel Heard, Valued, and Understood. She is an experienced international keynote speaker and a best-selling author, a CEO and founder of Employee Fanatics. Her experiences as an entrepreneur, manager, attorney, writer, coach, listener, speaker, collaborator, and mother of four, maybe most importantly, all lend themselves to a laser-focused clarity into what makes employees of organizations and companies, large and small, tick. And that's why she's here today. Heather, I'm so glad that you're here. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me, Kevin. This is pretty cool.
So listen, we got people from, Bellevue, Washington, and Jamaica, and Dallas, and Michigan, and Las Vegas, and Portugal, and India, and Virginia, and Algeria. You know what that tells me? That tells me that there's a lot of smart people that know that we could be better listeners. That's what that tells me. So Heather, let's start here. What led you to doing this kind of work? Like, what got you to this place? You didn't wake up when you were 5 and say, I'm going to be a listening expert.
Well, I mean, I think it actually does go way back for me on I think that a lot of people do the things they do, and it's born out of some adversity that's happened, something that happened in their past that made them you either made one choice or another. You choose to be like the adversity or the thing that you experienced, or you chose to be the opposite. And so for me, I chose to be the opposite. And then I just kind of presented to the world that way growing up and have evolved more and more into it. And so I would say the impetus for me most recently, let's say, is several years ago, I was working at a company that was going through a merger. And inside that culture, I noticed pretty quickly that the leaders weren't really leaning in to listen to what customers wanted through product implementations and product rollouts, and employees. They weren't listening to employees as they were becoming very anxious and mistrustful of everything that was happening. People with different titles were coming in, and they were like, that title sounds a lot like my title. People were left wondering, are these people taking over my roles? And there was just so much kind of disconnectedness happening. And so I felt my own self being dragged down as I was leading customer experience at the time. And people were coming to me, whether they reported to me or not, just saying, what is happening? No one's telling us anything. There's no communication. So I go to the head of HR and I go, listen, we've got to do something about this mistrust, this lack of engagement. It's just really breaking us down. And she said, you're right. You should go do something about that. And I was like, wait, what? How am I supposed to do something about that? I'm leading customer
I didn't want to be
experience.
voluntold here.
Yeah,
I want to
aren't
tell
you
you the
HR?
problem, and you go fix it.
aren't you HR? But see, this is where most of us think. We think HR is supposed to solve it. But at that point, I already acted like a culture ambassador, lifting people up, answering people's questions. I was just that person. And so I decided to take her up on this kind of suggestion and create an employee engagement council and brought people around the table who were from the different companies who had already exhibited a desire to be more and to make this merger happen. And so we did that, and I started to see the walls of mistrust break down. And we would do all these different activities to break down silos and create more connectedness. But unfortunately, like the logistics of the merger were already bearing down, and they ended up doing a layoff. And they laid off, like, the first round was like 200 of us. I was in the first round, and while it was an ouch at that time because I was the breadwinner of a family of 6 at that time, um, it was a huge wake up call for me. I had already been leading teams for, gosh, 20 years at that point, and and had been the kind of that voice for customer and employees, and that person that's kind of in the middle, kind of looking both ways, going like, what's happening here? And I just said, someone's got to be that in between, the one that bridges the gap between what's happening on the front line with the customers and employees and what the leaders know or paying attention to and what they do about what it is they find out. And so that's when I created my company. At that point, it was Customer Fanatics. Now it's Employee Fanatics, where we really help organizations listen more effectively to the insights they have inside the customer and employee base that they have, to say, how do we drive strategy that brings these people along, that's more inclusive in the journey, that gets us to the outcomes we're looking for. So that's where it all started.
So I opened, so thank you for that. I opened by saying that, we all listen every day, and yet maybe we don't do it as well as we could. Um, and and so we all know about listening, and we've all heard the phrase active listening, but that's at the forefront of the title of your new book, The Art of Active Listening. So, like a lot of phrases, I think we sometimes need to pump the brake and say, like, what do we mean? So you wrote the book. So you tell us what you mean when you say active listening. What does active listening mean? We're going to get into this, your cycle and all that in a
Yep.
second. But like, how would you define, how is active listening different from listening?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we're going to break that down. I think what we've done in the past is we've really oversimplified it, and we've made it robotic. So what I mean by that is most of us think of active listening as the process of sitting across from different people, whether on Zoom or on person, where they tell us something, we repeat back what we hear, we shake our head, and like that's what active listening is for most of us. Like that's what it is. And it's become robotic where we say, well, don't forget to say this and don't forget to repeat that and don't forget to do that. So it's become just like very non-relational. Okay. What active listening really is, it's the difference between thinking what we know that people want and actually knowing what they want. It's taking the assumptions out of what we think people need from us and getting to the point where we absolutely know what people want from us. And it is not a one and done process. It's a long journey. And for us to be good at it, it's not going to take some just like formulaic thing to necessarily get us there. While I will be sharing that process with people, it is up to us to figure out how we move in and out of that process, but also to understand that it is a cycle, that it never ends. That can sound exhausting to people, but it is in fact the reality. If we want to learn how to listen well and do it in an active way, we have to form both action, follow up. We have to look both at the things that we hear and the things that we see with our eyes and the things that we see and feel with our hearts. It is a sensory experience. So that's what we're going to talk a little more about.
So, you talked about thinking about listening as it being across the table from the other person or across the screen as we are right now. So you're talking about yes or no. I mean, I know the answer because I read the book, but um, you're talking about listening as being more than a one and done, which means it's not just listening to this conversation, but it's an ongoing process. Say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think the key is we need to think of listening as almost like a tennis match. That ball's going back and forth. Someone serves you, you serve it back. Someone serves you, you serve it back. And it takes a lot. I mean, like that match is going on for a while, right? And at the end, obviously someone wins. But in the end, as we think about the receptivity of that, there's a back and forth, there's a supportive feature of it. And that's what listening is. It should be a supportive element. And so, what I always say, like in this whole active listening journey, is how do we start off with our listening? Are we going in to kind of gain things for our benefit only? Are we going in to serve people in the moment? Or are we going really just to kind of grab the thing we need without consideration for the other person on the other end and what they need? So if we have the right mindset as we lean in to listen, what I call seeking, if we have that right mindset to begin with, it is going to be more fruitful. And at the very end of this process or cycle, now the person on the other end will finally feel heard, valued, and understood. But if we don't do that and we really go in to grab the thing we need only, we really focus on the thing that we're trying to get out of it. And we're not saying, how am I serving this moment? Did I actually come out of this? Does the other person on the other end come out of it and they could see by their eyes, they could hear with their ears, and they could even feel with that sensory part of them that I was interested in them, that I was interested in what they needed from me. Because that's when success happens in this active listening cycle, is when that other person on the other end is getting it. They're like, they get me. I see they're getting me. I see there's interest in me. Okay, now the listening's good.
Yeah. We talk about that as the difference between transaction and interaction, right? And I think that's what you're talking about in many ways.
Mhm.
So I hinted at this idea of a cycle, and the core of the art from your perspective is this cycle that has five parts. And so what I thought we'd do is talk about each of them just a little bit. We don't have time to unpack them. I'm talking with the in depth, obviously. I'm talking with the author of the new book, The Art of Active Listening, Heather Younger. You can see her there, and if you're watching, you can see the book right there. It is. It's all there. Uh, how people at work feel heard, valued, and understood. So there's a cycle, and so let's talk about the steps. The first step being recognizing the unsaid. How am I supposed to listen to what they didn't say?
Well, I think the key is often what happens. I don't know the exact stats on it, but it's pretty big. It's what is it, like 70% of communication is nonverbal, right? And so a lot of the things that are happening in our environment, as we think about, it doesn't have to be someone who manages people, but it could just be anybody. And there's a lot of stuff that's happening in our environment as we walk through it, whether we walk through it physically through a building, or as we're interacting with people in Slack, or as we're interacting with people in text, or there's these things happening, and there's these things that are not being said. And if we're not courageous enough and curious enough to like lean in with sets of questions that like bring more out, we're missing a lot of things. There's like a lot of blind spots. But we have to really be paying attention with our eyes, and I say and our hearts, to be receptive to what might be happening. And it could be something that's not like we don't know the answer to, and it makes us uncomfortable. So that's what the recognizing unsaid is. It's looking at the nonverbal cues. It's recognizing what we are sensing in an environment. And I think a lot of us can sense, a lot of us sense and ignore what we sense. But it's saying, I'm not going to ignore what I'm sensing. I'm going to be more open to what I sense and the things that I notice that aren't being said. Because if I don't do that, the blind spots are rampant. And we can't even get to the next step of of understanding and listening to really say, how do we really understand what's happening here? So recognizing unsaid requires that we kind of peel away that like, need to move fast, get through checklists, and to say, what's happening here? And pause enough to say, huh, I'm sensing something's off with this person, with this environment, with this team, with the culture. And I am going to be more curious now and I'm going to lean in. But you can't even do that until you say, well, you're saying you recognize there's a deficiency or something.
So you said something at the start of this just now that I thought was really interesting. You used two words, curious and courageous. Which do you think is more likely the one we are deficit in that keeps which is the bigger barrier to us doing what you've just described?
Hmm, that's a really hard one because I think many of us are posturing most of the time. So we are waiting to respond versus like actually understanding or listening. We're waiting to like for our side. We're looking for our in. It could sound pessimistic, but it really is true. It's human nature. Like there's like survival thing in us, right? So curiosity means that I'm taking myself like out of the picture with a real desire to understand another. The courageousness is saying, I notice something's not happening. And I don't even know why, and I'm gonna lean into that. even though I don't know the end result. Like the end result could hurt me, the end result could be painful. So
Sure.
I think it's like, I don't know on both ends because of the human nature in us that we are trying to survive, we're trying to succeed, we're all these things, and we're trying to stand out, we like our names to be said, like all the things, right? I think it's hard on all of us. And so it takes a high level of intentionality on both ends. It takes a high level of self-awareness and this need to pause for us to do well on any of these things.
So be open to, recognize, pay attention to what's not being said, the nonverbal part of what's going on, so that we can do step two. So tell us about, excuse me, tell us about step two.
When we think of seeking to understand, we think of this like this is what we think this step is listening. Just this step alone. We think this step is listening. So I'm sitting right now. You are on here, and you're asking me questions, and I'm listening to you, and I go, oh gosh, and what I heard you say, Kevin, was this. That's oof. And what I and so and this is the next thing. Oh, I heard you just say that, and yeah, wow. And that is an important part of this cycle of active listening. Seeking is absolutely paramount. We can't even like go to the next few steps if we don't get this right, right? But we think it starts and stops here. And so what I would say seeking really is that we are leaning in, trying to the best we can to remove our filter. So all of our background, all those, and we're saying, what's going on with here? This is where curiosity really comes into play. And we're saying, okay, I see that this person's in pain. I see that this person, they have a request for me. This thing happened to them, whatever that might be. It could be a customer, an employee, it could be a partner, or anybody. It could be, a lot of times people say this is the same thing they do with their house, in their household, with their spouse, with their children, where we lean in and we're like, gosh, I can see this thing is frustrating. Let me go deeper. Let me ask this person these questions. And instead of what I say is, instead of parroting back to the person exactly what it is they said to me, which can be super frustrating, I'm going to paraphrase it, but I'm also going to tell them back what I'm seeing and what I'm sensing. And I want them to sniff test whether I'm accurate. So someone could be coming to me and they could be, seeming really frustrated about something. And they may tell me something and I may say, gosh, thank you, Kevin, for sharing that. I can see how all of those things that happened with your sister and the things they're happening at work. And I can see how all of this is just piling up on you and it's making you feel frustrated. Okay. I'm the thing I'm doing is not parroting. They can see I'm getting them because I'm giving it back to them the entire sensory experiencing of the seeking. And I'm seeking for their good. I'm seeking to dig in and find out what their truth is, not what my truth is. I may have to use some of my truth, some of my context to get to their truth, but in the end, I'm digging and I'm seeking for their truth because I can't solve for anything that they need from me. I can't even get the outcomes I'm looking for if I am not seeking their truth because I can't even land on the solution for them. I'm landing on my solution for me. So that's where the seeking becomes more fertile, more fruitful, because I'm really leaning in for their benefit. Don't parrot, pause, summarize, and make sure you take into consideration their emotional state as they talk to you, as they make a request from you, and that's how you'll be more fruitful in the seeking phase.
Don't parrot, paraphrase, but do more than just paraphrase, right? Um, now you've just said all of what we think listening is, but you say, whoa, 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 Kevin, we're only 40% of the way there. So step like, and everyone's saying, hey,
It's true.
this was already hard, Heather. Come on now. But the third step is, I think, is really important, and it's decode. So tell us what you mean by decode. So
Yeah,
we've spent time trying to hear and sense what's beyond what they're saying. We've gone beyond parroting or playing back the tape to really help do what we would probably all originally have said was the active listening part really well. And now we have to decode. What do you mean?
the decoding really is this idea of pausing enough, and reflecting either as a group, reflecting on our own, reflecting like by doing research on a particular topic. Let me just give you an example of what I mean by decoding. So a client gave me feedback and they were concerned about a particular process that was happening inside of their between my organization and theirs. So like I'm the intermediary between the customer and the
Mhm.
organization. And they come to me and they give feedback that says this process is really causing us a lot of headache. And in fact, it's actually putting into jeopardy potentially like patience. Okay. So we need you to like do this thing or we are gone. And so they give me the feedback, they tell me what it is, and I could be like, okay, well, here's what we're gonna do it. Like, here's what we're gonna do about it right now. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and go to this, and it's just we're gonna take care of it. Instead, what I do is I go, "Oh my god, this is we did not know this, and I am so sorry for this. Do you mind if I come back to you in the next 24 hours? I know this is kind of important. Now, if it's life or death, it might be, do you mind I get back to the office or I talk to the team right now and I'll
Right.
come back to you in an hour? I come back to you in 30 minutes. It just depends on what it is. But more often than not, we can take more time. Can I come back to you in 24 hours? 48 hours, 72 hours, a week, depending on what it is. And I want to go do some research. I want to talk to the team. I want to see what's happening. I go back and do that. I do my research. I do my reflection. And then I come back to them and I go, customer, thank you so much for that feedback, that insight. We had no clue. We should have known, we didn't, and I apologize for that. Here's what the team has come up with. I've talked to this department, that department. I've taken some time to look through your records. I looked at, so I'm going through this entire effort, and here's what I come up with. And I think we're going to solve for that issue. Here's what we can do about it. Does that work for you? Okay, great. Now, just so you know, we're going to do these things. I'm going to come back to you in the next couple weeks to see how it's going. Okay, great. Go back and do it. Come back to the customer. But it's that decoding part, that in between of like, I have to get permission to reflect. I needed to go decode. I need to go research from the customer. I go do that with the team by myself with it. And then I go back to them. That's of course the next step. But this decoding part, if we don't pause, what happens is we act too quickly in a lot of cases. We may even cause more issues for that customer, that employee, that partner, because we didn't take the time to think it through, to be more strategic about the actions we're going to take. It is a huge error on our part. We give away our ability to show them how important they are, and we also take away the power they have, because in the current kind of infrastructure, as we think of customers, employees, when they are external to the leadership dynamic, let's say, they feel powerless. They feel a little helpless to a lot of the things that are happening to them. If we take that decoding time, we insert their power back into the dynamic, because now they see that we're going out of our way to solve for their issue, not just like right in the moment, but we're going out of their way in a deep way. And we're like going to bat for them. Now they're like, huh, wow, they do really care about our business. They care about me and
Right.
my feedback. It's a powerful cycle, that
Heard,
decoding part.
valued, understood, right?
Yep,
They feel
exactly.
those things. And
Absolutely.
I think the other thing is, you know, you and I are in similar-ish businesses, and so sometimes people, the way they frame the problem as they see it, it ends up being a symptom and not actually the root cause, which is another reason why if we will if we ask for and are granted the time to step back and do it, we will like almost assuredly come up with a better solution and all of the other good stuff that we're talking about. But it does lead us to the next part. Like you almost couldn't keep yourself from saying the next part.
Yep.
So go ahead. Step 4 in the
It
cycle is
It's act, it's act. And I think, there's some of us that do action better. Where we mostly, there's a two areas we mostly fall down on, and I think it really is decoding in the final step, which we'll talk about. But the decoding part is absolutely critical. And what will happen often is we get feedback, we get a request, and we go straight to acting. We don't take the time to research. We don't take the time to reflect. We don't ask permission to kind of let us pause to process what's happening here. We don't think of the strategic elements of what the action needs to be. So we just take this like uneducated action, maybe non-strategic action. And I'm saying with the pause allows you to be more strategic, allows you to say, okay, what this customer, this employee, these employees have given us this feedback. What do we already have that's on our plate that we already intend to do? Maybe it's already on our strategic,
right,
like it's on our scorecard, that like something that we already know we're getting to. Well, let's go get to it. They don't necessarily know that's a main thing that we're focusing on. It could be that it's something we didn't have on there and we needed to, and it serves the bigger, broader audience.
right.
So we have to just be more strategic in when we're thinking about the action. We don't need to act on everything, because people always ask me that. Oh my gosh, this cycle is like exhausting. I can't act on everything. Who has time for that? And I'm not even at all alluding to the fact that we need to do that. In fact, if you follow this cycle through and you get to the conclusion through your investigation and your processing in the decoding phase and come to you realize action can't be had, action doesn't need there's no action you can do. Often they'll see that you went through the motions of researching it on their behalf, and they'll be like, okay. Or sometimes you get to come back to them with, I can't do the thing you requested, but here's an in between point. Here's an in between
Right.
place, a compromise we can do.
And again, still valued, heard,
Yep.
understood, right?
Absolutely.
Which is sort of the subtext that we're after here. So the last step is then to close the loop. So talk for just a second about that last step. If we did act, if there was action to take, then we close the loop. What does that look like?
Well, to be honest, you close the loop, period. So you close the loop because you're either closing the loop. Closing the loop just means this: you, after they've given you feedback, a request, a suggestion, something like that. Now you're taking that time to reflect, right? You have to go back to them, even if it's a no. You have to go back. If it's a no, you go back and say, "Oh my gosh, customer. Oh my gosh, team member. Oh my gosh, team." I went to look at all the things you said. We did find some, actually. We found some truth in this thing right here, and that we're going to do something about that. But these three things right here, after we looked at it, we investigated this. We spoke to these three stakeholders. What we discovered is this was the issue. This wasn't the issue. What we discovered was, while this is an issue, it doesn't cause as much, whatever that is, in the back end, the front end. I'm being general because it completely depends on the issue. I say that the decoding part really is kind of like the data seeking. We're seeking the data, whether quantitative or qualitative. We're seeking, the data could be like what we're sensing, what we're feeling from the interaction. So again, it's still data. So we're doing that part to inform our next step. So when we go to close the loop, we have that kind of line of thinking of the advocacy that we did on their behalf along the way, where they go, okay, I see they care about me. I see they care about my feedback. They went through all of these things and they came up with this conclusion, which is like, maybe they can't do this thing. But they also came up with a compromise, which is obviously the better place to end when you go close the loop. So you just go
Right.
back to them and say, we can't do that thing. Thank you for the feedback. I've done all these things, and here's what's happened. The other thing is, the closing the loop doesn't happen just once. So closing the loop is something that needs to be happening often. So if they give you feedback and you've changed something, for example, or you're in the process of acting on their behalf, you're going to go back to them and say, how do you think that thing is going? The thing you've told us about, our action we took. How do you think? Here's another thing we did based upon your feedback. So this would be like an employee survey. It could be some listening sessions or roundtable. It could be a one-on-one thing where they give you different pieces of feedback. And you have to you're like taking action over a year's time, 2 years' time. You want to close a loop pretty periodically so that they don't forget that you heard them, that they don't forget that you are advocating for their voice.
Awesome. So Heather, I knew that we could spend a lot longer than we have time for. I knew that before we started, before I said hello to you when you joined me in the green room. But I want to leave a thought with everybody before we sort of go into the final step stage of our time together, and that is that what you've all heard from Heather is certainly every one of these five steps helps you in an individual communication situation, right? But she's also putting this in the bigger picture of ongoing relationships, be it with customers, be it with team members, being with, as a coach with a client, be that with a member of your family, whatever it is. And so I hope that you will think about this not only in terms of greater depth, but in terms of different levels and ways of thinking about listening. And I hope I represented that well, Heather.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Great job.
So, so I have one more question about listening before we talk about Heather, and that one is, where should people start? Um, you've given us a lot to think about in the last 30 minutes or so. Where would you recommend people start?
I think it kind of depends. Obviously, the starting point is always going to be the recognizing the unsaid. So, the cycle is linear and continuous. So it's like circular, but it really is like it follows this mark. Now, often what might happen is you realize, let's say you're thinking right now at the top of your head that there was an interaction or something that happened the other day, and you did those things. You noticed something, you leaned and understand. Maybe you even reflected, maybe you took action, you didn't close the loop. Well, go back and close the loop. It's never too late. You can still go close the loop now. So sometimes you can take it out. You don't have to say, you don't have to feel like you've done it wrong or slap yourself for what you did in the past. Just evaluate your interactions, see if there's a way to go back. If not, you start from today and going forward. You don't say, oh, yesterday I sucked at this. You say, okay, today I'm choosing a different path. So I would say that's that. Start with where you're at. Start with what best suits you. If there are places you can go back to close the loop or act, go do that. But in the end, start from like today going forward, and and just do your best.
Awesome. So it's clear that you love your work and are passionate about what you do. But I want to know what, not listening, not working. What do you do for fun?
Wow. I have 4 children, as we said earlier, and I would say my most fun is just being with them. I call them my crew. I like being with, working out with them or like going on walks with them, going to movies with them. I just like hanging out with my kids. That's probably my most fun.
All right, cool. And the only thing you knew I was going to ask you is this, which is, what are you reading these days, or what's something you've read recently?
I just started to read "Discover Your Fair Advantage" by Sylvie Giusto. I always mess up her last name, and it's a one. It was a thick old book. I should have brought that out here to show you, but it's one of those books. It's a reference book, and it talks about how like ways that we can advance our career, but ways that we can kind of differentiate ourselves and find out the ways and discover the ways that we stand out, and how we can utilize that for our best good, really. So, "Discover Your Fair Advantage" by Sylvie.
Discover your unfair advantage. Is that what you said?
No, no, discover your fair
Fair
advantage.
advantage. Thank
Yeah,
you.
what's your advantage? What's your thing that sets you
Discover
apart?
your fair
Fair
advantage.
advantage. Yeah.
You got it. We will have that in the show notes, everybody. And so now, the question that you most wanted me to ask, Heather, where can we learn more? Where do you want to point people? Where can people get a copy of this book? Where do you want to send people? Because they've seen how brilliant you are, and now they want to be connected with you. Where do you want to send them?
I mean, obviously the book is on Amazon. You can get it anywhere, and so I would definitely say if you want to go deeper on this, there's just a kind of a workbooky feel that in the book, so you can really go deeper and kind of uncover some gaps for yourself and some solutions for yourself. And then I would say LinkedIn is probably the best way to just follow me. I do put a lot of stuff out there, and my website he already put up there, which is heatheryounger.com or employeefanatics.com. But I have 3 websites, so it's hard to keep track of me. But I would say if you did LinkedIn, you would be able to at least find me and then find out where you can follow me in other areas.
HeatherYounger.com, employeefanatics.com.
Yep.
And now a question. You're almost done, Heather, but everybody else, now you're on the hook. The question I have for you, as I ask you every single episode, is now what? What action are you going to take? You got all sorts of practical ideas from Heather. And while she has a cycle, her point about where you think about a relationship you're in, think about a communication cycle that you're in, and where and what do you need to do next? What ideas did you get that you want to go apply? It's one thing to be inspired by this conversation. It's wonderful if you found like that was useful, but that is only intellectual. The only way anything changes if you go take action. So the question is, now what? What did you get? What action will you take as related to what you got? Because if you do that, then and only then will this be as valuable to you as it could have been. Think about this as an opportunity to continue to improve and grow. Heather, thank you so much for being with us. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me on. This is great. Got me going for my day.
And there you go. And everybody, we can get you going every week with another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. And if you're just now joining us, there's 300 and some episodes. You can go back. Like, you got one a day for a long, long time. But listen, we're here every week, and we hope that wherever you found us, you will come back there, whether it's with us live, whether it's with us on the podcast. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, review, refer, do those things, and come back and join us next week for another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. Thanks, everybody.